Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Hit the bell for new stories. The story begins with Saga, a cold and calculated alien assassin from the Nixidian race, who has a flawless record of completing every contract. This time he is offered a staggering sum to eliminate a human named Lieutenant Adrian Cole, a war hero celebrated for turning impossible odds in humanity's favor during a recent galactic conflict. Saga scoffs at the challenge, believing humans to be fragile and unsophisticated creatures. However, when Saga researches Adrian's combat history, he begins to uncover strange anomalies, such as unexplainable victories and mysterious reports of human adaptability. Despite these warnings, Saga accepts the contract, confident in his skills. As he tracks Adrian to an isolated frontier colony, a cryptic message is sent to him. Run? Saga sets his trap for Adrian, using advanced camouflage and Nixidian weapons. To his shock, Adrian not only avoids the ambush but counters it with unnerving precision. Using nothing more than basic equipment and cunning tactics, Adrian turns the battlefield against Saga, who narrowly escapes with minor injuries. The Nixidian assassin begins to doubt his initial assumptions about humans, as he realizes Adrian's ability to improvise in unpredictable and dangerous ways. For the first time in his career, Saga feels a tinge of fear. He receives another cryptic message: "You were warned." Saga grows frustrated and doubles down on his efforts, employing Nixidian drones, psychic probes, and biotrackers. Adrian, however, appears to be one step ahead at every turn, leaving a trail of false leads and traps that destroy Saga's resources. Meanwhile, flashbacks reveal Adrian's training and his knack for surviving against overwhelming odds. The colony residents, though initially unaware of the assassin, start to piece together what's happening, and they subtly aid Adrian by feeding misinformation to Saga. Desperate and increasingly paranoid, Saga begins to feel hunted rather than the hunter. Cornered in a labyrinthine cave system, Saga finally confronts Adrian. The tension builds as Adrian calmly acknowledges the contract on his life. He offers Saga a chance to leave unharmed, but Saga, driven by his pride and reputation, refuses. A brutal and high-stakes battle ensues. Adrian's ability to adapt to Saga's advanced weaponry and combat techniques takes the alien assassin by surprise. Despite his advanced technology, Saga finds himself outmaneuvered, as Adrian uses the environment to his advantage. Ultimately, Saga is disarmed and gravely injured. Adrian spares Saga's life, stating that humanity doesn't kill for sport or pride. He leaves the assassin with a simple warning: "Next time, don't underestimate us." Saga, humiliated and confused by Adrian's mercy, begins to question the values of his profession and his race's perception of humanity. Meanwhile, Adrian sends a message back to the alien client who issued the contract, warning them that humans are not to be trifled with and suggesting they reconsider their plans for future conflicts. Saga returns to his Nixidian employers but finds himself changed by the encounter. He delivers a report emphasizing humanity's ingenuity and resilience, urging caution in dealing with them. However, his words are met with skepticism and ridicule by his peers. Faced with a choice between continuing his career or embracing a new path, Saga decides to seek out Adrian again, not as an enemy, but as someone who might help him understand the human mindset and what it means to fight for something greater than oneself. The story concludes with Adrian preparing humanity for a potential Nixidian retaliation. Saga, now an outcast among his people, covertly aids Adrian by providing intelligence on Nixidian strategies and weaknesses. Together, they deliver a powerful message to the galaxy. Humanity is not just resilient but capable of inspiring change in even its fiercest enemies. The final scene shows Saga watching from the shadows as Adrian leads a united human force, knowing he made the right choice in heeding the warning: "Run?" Saga leaned back in the shadows of the Nixidian council chamber, his serpentine body coiled in a posture of feigned indifference. He watched as the hologram of his next target flickered to life. A human male, mid-30s, dark hair streaked with gray at the temples, a piercing gaze that seemed to see right through the projection. "This is Adrian Cole," the client said, their voice distorted to mask their identity. "Eliminate him and you'll be paid triple your usual rate." Saga's mandibles clicked in amusement. "A human? They are primitive, weak, barely evolved from their planet's ecosystem. Why should I care?" The hologram shifted to display grainy footage of Adrian in action. In one clip, he single-handedly disabled an enemy mech with nothing but improvised explosives. In another, he led a ragged group of colonists against an Nixidian patrol, outsmarting them at every turn. Each scene seemed more improbable than the last. "You'll care," the client replied coldly, Because Adrian Cole is the reason we lost the Velros outpost. He's not just a human, he's a symbol. Remove him and humanity loses hope. Soccer studied the footage again, his confidence undeterred. Symbols bleed just like anyone else, he said, accepting the contract. Later, aboard his stealth ship, Soccer reviewed Adrian's file. Every page was littered with anomalies, tales of survival, cunning, and an almost supernatural ability to turn defeat into victory. He dismissed them as exaggerated war propaganda. Yet, as he neared the colony where Adrian had last been sighted, his ship's communication system crackled to life with a single, chilling transmission. Run? Soccer's cloaked ship hovered silently above the jagged ridges of the isolated frontier colony. The desolate landscape below was dotted with prefabricated habitats, their walls patched and worn from years of exposure to the harsh environment. Heat signatures flared on Soccer's visor as he surveyed the area, identifying a group of colonists working on repairing a water tower near the edge of the settlement. Among them was Adrian Cole. There you are, Soccer thought, narrowing his yellow eyes. The human stood out easily, tall, broad-shouldered, and confident, moving with a purpose that the other colonists lacked. He radiated an air of command that set him apart, even in this remote corner of the galaxy. Soccer activated his stealth cloak and descended from his ship, his lithe frame blending seamlessly into the rocky terrain. His Nixidian hunting instincts kicked in as he stalked closer, each movement calculated and silent. He carried a plasma spear, a weapon designed for precision strikes, and a wrist-mounted pulse generator capable of incapacitating targets in a wide radius. From his concealed position atop a ridge overlooking the water tower, Soccer set his ambush. A single well-placed shot from his plasma spear would eliminate Adrian in seconds. The Nixidian assassin took aim, calibrating his weapon to pierce through Adrian's torso with surgical accuracy. But as his targeting reticle locked onto Adrian, the human suddenly froze. Without turning, Adrian raised his hand and gave a subtle gesture to the colonists, who immediately dispersed, disappearing into the nearby structures. Soccer's mandibles twitched in confusion. How had Adrian sensed him? The Nixidian assassin's cloaking technology was years ahead of anything humans possessed. His doubts were interrupted when Adrian stepped forward, placing himself in the open. His calm gaze scanned the ridgeline as if daring the assassin to strike. Soccer didn't hesitate. He fired. The plasma spear launched with a hiss of energy, streaking toward its target at near light speed. But in the same instant, Adrian rolled to the side, the spear embedding harmlessly into the ground where he had stood. The human moved with startling precision as if he had anticipated the attack. Soccer growled, leaping down from his perch to engage his prey directly. He activated his pulse generator, sending a shockwave of kinetic energy rippling through the area. Dust and debris erupted into the air, and the force knocked over nearby structures. Yet when the dust settled, Adrian was gone. Before Soccer could react, a sharp whistle echoed from behind him. He spun around only to see Adrian perched on a nearby boulder, holding a makeshift slingshot. The human released a small metallic object, a device hastily cobbled together from scrap. It struck the generator on Soccer's wrist and detonated in a burst of EMP energy. The pulse generator sparked and died, leaving Soccer momentarily disoriented. He cursed in his native tongue, his body locking up as the EMP's residual charge interfered with his cybernetic enhancements. By the time he regained his bearings, Adrian had vanished again. Soccer scanned the area, frustration mounting. This was supposed to be a straightforward kill. Humans were supposed to panic and flee, not counterattack with improvised weaponry. His thoughts were interrupted by the faint sound of movement, a rhythmic tapping coming from the shadows of a nearby structure. He followed the sound cautiously, entering a dilapidated warehouse filled with rusting machinery. The air was thick with the acrid stench of oil and decay. Soccer's infrared sensors detected a faint heat signature moving through the maze of equipment. "Impressive," he called out, his voice echoing through the space. "You've lasted longer than most. But your tricks won't save you." A low chuckle answered him. Adrian's voice was calm and unshaken. "Tricks? You mean the kind you're using now? You're not the first assassin to come after me, Nixidian. But you might be the most predictable." Soccer snarled and lunged toward the source of the voice, but his foot triggered a pressure plate hidden beneath the floor. A mechanical arm swung down from above, slamming into him and knocking him into a pile of scrap metal. The impact jarred his spear loose from its holster, sending it skittering across the floor. Adrian stepped into view, holding a makeshift rifle cobbled together from spare parts. His expression was grim but composed. "You're good, I'll give you that. But you're hunting the wrong species if you think brute force and tech are enough." Soccer hissed, lunging for his spear. But before he could reach it, Adrian fired. The blast didn't hit Soccer directly. Instead, it struck the pile of scrap metal, which collapsed onto the assassin in a clattering avalanche. Pinned beneath the debris, Soccer growled in frustration. Adrian approached cautiously, keeping his weapon trained on the Nixidian. "You're alive because I want you to deliver a message," Adrian said, his voice steady. "Tell whoever sent you that humanity doesn't play by their rules. And next time they send someone, they'd better bring more than just fancy gadgets." Before Soccer could respond, Adrian turned and disappeared into the shadows, leaving the assassin humiliated and fuming. As Soccer extricated himself from the wreckage, his communicator crackled to life. A single word came through, chilling in its simplicity. The transport bay of Soccer's ship was dimly lit, filled with the hum of recalibrating weapons and the occasional hiss of an automated repair drone. The Nixidian assassin sat motionless, a long gash running down the side of his scaled face, a stark reminder of his failure. His mandibles twitched as he replayed the ambush over and over in his mind, analyzing every move. Adrian Cole was unlike any target Soccer had faced. Not because of strength or advanced technology, no, the human relied on something far more dangerous: ingenuity. "This is personal now," Soccer growled to himself, gripping the edge of the table where his arsenal was laid out. The memory of Adrian's parting words still burned. No one mocked Soccer and lived to tell the tale. The assassin initiated a full scan of the colony using his ship's surveillance array. He deployed Nixidian drones, spindly, spider-like machines equipped with advanced sensors, and biotrackers capable of tracing heat signatures across several kilometers. If Adrian wanted to play a game of survival, Soccer would oblige. The drones spread out, crawling through the rocky terrain and slipping into the colony's crevices. Their feed streamed back to Soccer's helmet display, painting a vivid map of the area. Every heat signature, every movement, every shadow was meticulously catalogued. Yet, as the minutes turned into hours, Soccer found himself growing increasingly frustrated. Adrian wasn't where he was supposed to be. The colonists seemed nervous, whispering to each other in tight groups, but none gave away Adrian's location. The man had vanished as though he'd never existed. "Impressive," Soccer muttered. "But I will find you." Adrian watched the Nixidian drone skitter past from his hiding spot beneath a pile of scrap metal in the colony's industrial sector. His breathing was steady, his body still. He'd spent hours setting up a web of false trails, rigged heat sources, looping holograms, and deliberate footprints leading to nowhere. He smirked as one of the drones locked onto a trail and scuttled toward a decoy beacon. Seconds later, the beacon emitted a burst of electromagnetic energy, frying the drone's circuitry and sending it crumpling to the ground. Adrian's calm exterior hid the gnawing tension in his chest. He wasn't just playing for his own survival, he was protecting the entire colony. The people here had been through enough. He wouldn't let an alien assassin tear their lives apart. He adjusted the strap on his makeshift rifle, cobbled together from scavenged Nixidian parts and human ingenuity. It wasn't elegant, but it would do the job. Soccer cursed as another drone feed went dark. His fingers danced over the controls, attempting to reroute the remaining drones to more promising locations. The assassin's frustration deepened with every failure. Adrian wasn't just hiding, he was actively dismantling Soccer's resources, piece by piece. Soccer activated his psychic probe, a last-resort Nixidian tool that amplified his species' natural predatory instincts. It allowed him to tap into the emotional residue of his target, sensing fear, anger, and intent like a hunter following a blood trail. Closing his eyes, he focused. The psychic waves rippled outward, seeking Adrian's presence. At first, the probe found nothing but the faint emotional echoes of the colonists: worry, desperation, confusion. Then, faintly, he caught a flicker of something sharper. It wasn't fear. It was a controlled, calculating resolve. "There you are," Soccer hissed, locking onto the sensation. Adrian felt the hairs on the back of his neck stand up as the Nixidian probe brushed against his mind. He exhaled slowly, grounding himself. The Nixidians relied too much on their tools. The probe might sense him, but it didn't account for one crucial advantage Adrian had. He knew the terrain. He moved quickly, slipping into a series of interconnected maintenance tunnels beneath the colony. They were cramped, dark, and filled with the stench of stale air and engine grease. Perfect. As he navigated the tunnels, Adrian set more traps: explosive charges wired to pressure plates, tripwires leading to deadfalls, and even decoy devices designed to emit his heat signature. He had no intention of facing the assassin head-on, at least not yet. Soccer descended into the maintenance tunnels, his plasma spear glowing faintly in the dim light. His augmented vision highlighted every detail: the faint smudges of Adrian's fingerprints on a rusted ladder, the disturbed dust near a tunnel entrance. He moved cautiously, every sense on high alert. This was Adrian's domain now, and Soccer knew he was walking into a trap. But he didn't care. He thrived on challenges, and the hunt had only sharpened his determination. The first trap caught him off guard. A pressure plate triggered a burst of flames from a nearby exhaust pipe. Soccer leapt back, narrowly avoiding the inferno. The second trap, a tripwire connected to a collapsing ceiling panel, cost him precious time, forcing him to dig his way out of the rubble. By the time he reached the end of the tunnel, his patience was wearing thin. "Enough games, human," he roared, his voice echoing through the dark. From the shadows, Adrian's voice replied, calm and steady. "Games? This is war, Nixidian. And you're losing." Before Soccer could react, a series of explosions erupted behind him, sealing the tunnel and cutting off his retreat. Adrian's silhouette appeared at the far end, his rifle raised. "Let's finish this," Adrian said, his eyes cold and unyielding. The tunnel echoed with the faint crackle of flames and the slow drip of water from fractured pipes. Soccer stood amid the wreckage, his plasma spear in hand, his eyes fixed on Adrian Cole. The human's makeshift rifle was steady, aimed directly at the assassin's center mass. Despite the weapon's crude appearance, Soccer didn't doubt its lethality. Adrian's voice broke the tense silence. "You don't have to die here. Leave now and no one will stop you." Soccer's mandibles twitched in a sneer. "You misunderstand, human. I do not flee. And I do not fail." The assassin lunged forward with a speed that defied his towering frame, his plasma spear slashing through the air in a deadly arc. Adrian sidestepped the strike, his movements sharp and controlled, and fired a shot aimed at Soccer's leg. The energy bolt hit its mark, grazing Soccer's thigh. The Nixidian stumbled but recovered quickly, using his spear to vault over a pile of rubble and close the distance between them. Adrian backpedaled, his rifle firing in short, precise bursts that forced Soccer to weave and dodge. The confined space of the tunnel worked against both of them, limiting their movements. Sparks flew as the plasma spear scraped against the metal walls, and each step was punctuated by the sound of boots and claws scraping over debris. "You're good," Soccer admitted, his voice a low growl. "Better than I expected. But you're still human. You'll tire before I do." Adrian smirked, his expression calm despite the chaos. "Maybe. But I don't need to outlast you, I just need to outthink you." The fight shifted as Adrian led Soccer deeper into the maze of tunnels. Every turn brought new obstacles: collapsing walls, debris-strewn passages, and sudden bursts of steam from ruptured pipes. Adrian's intimate knowledge of the colony's infrastructure gave him an edge, allowing him to maneuver Soccer into tighter and more vulnerable positions. Soccer, however, wasn't a mere brute. He adapted quickly, using his spear to clear pathways and his natural agility to evade Adrian's traps. He began to anticipate the human's tactics, countering with feints and sudden bursts of speed that forced Adrian to retreat further. But Adrian had anticipated this. As they entered a wide chamber filled with industrial machinery, Adrian activated a hidden switch. The ground beneath Soccer trembled, and the assassin realized too late that he had stepped onto a platform rigged to collapse. With a deafening crash, the floor gave way, sending Soccer plummeting into a lower level. He landed hard, his spear clattering out of reach. For a moment, the assassin lay still, the wind knocked out of him. Adrian appeared at the edge of the opening, his rifle trained on the Nixidian below. "It's over. Stay down." Soccer's yellow eyes burned with rage. "Do you think I fear death? Do you think I will beg?" Adrian didn't respond. Instead, he adjusted his aim slightly, targeting the power pack of Soccer's spear where it lay on the ground. He fired, and the pack exploded in a burst of white-hot energy. The shockwave sent Soccer sprawling, his armor scorched and his primary weapon destroyed. The Nixidian assassin rose slowly, his body battered but his resolve unbroken. He extended his claws, preparing to charge. "You're relentless. I'll give you that," Adrian said, his tone almost admiring. "But there's one thing you still don't understand about humans." "And what is that?" Soccer growled. Adrian's eyes narrowed. "We don't fight to win. We fight because we refuse to lose." Soccer charged, his claws slashing through the air. Adrian stood his ground, waiting until the last possible second before sidestepping the attack. He swung the butt of his rifle into Soccer's side, using the alien's momentum against him and sending him crashing into a nearby wall. The impact left a dent in the metal and Soccer slumped to the ground, dazed. Adrian approached cautiously, his weapon still raised. "Stay down," Adrian said again, his voice firm but not unkind. "This doesn't have to end with one of us dead." For a moment, Soccer considered lunging again. But his injuries were severe, and the human's aim was unwavering. He realized that he had underestimated his target not just once, but at every turn. What kind of assassin spares his prey? Soccer spat, his voice laced with bitterness. "I'm not an assassin," Adrian replied. "I'm a soldier. There's a difference." Adrian lowered his rifle slightly, enough to show he wasn't going to shoot but not enough to invite further attack. "Go back to whoever sent you. Tell them what happened here. Tell them to think twice before coming after us again." Soccer's mandibles twitched, his pride warring with his survival instincts. He hated the idea of retreating, but he wasn't a fool. He had lost this battle, and continuing to fight would only ensure his death. With a pained growl, he turned and limped away, disappearing into the shadows of the lower tunnels. Adrian watched until he was certain the Nixidian was gone. Then he exhaled, the tension draining from his body. He adjusted his rifle strap and began making his way back to the surface. The colonists would be safe for now. But Adrian knew this wasn't over. Whoever had sent the assassin would try again, and next time they might send something worse. But Adrian was ready. Humanity didn't back down, and neither would he. The silence of the colony was deafening after the battle. As Adrian made his way through the quiet streets, his senses remained on high alert. The air had the acrid sting of fresh smoke, and the ground was littered with debris from the explosion. But more than anything, there was the feeling of unease settling over the settlement. Soccer's retreat had only been temporary. The assassin's employer would not give up so easily. Adrian knew that they would return with more firepower, and when they did, the stakes would be even higher. As he reached the heart of the colony, Adrian paused in front of the Central Command building. Inside, the colony's leaders were already gathering, no doubt discussing the aftermath of the attack. He stepped through the large doors, his eyes scanning the room. Colonel Harris, a seasoned military officer who had helped organize the colony's defense, stood at the front. Behind him were engineers and scientists, all trying to make sense of the damage and determine their next steps. Adrian's reputation had earned him a place in these discussions, but today his presence felt like more of a formality. They were all aware of the stakes now. "The assassin was only the beginning," Adrian said, addressing the room. "Soccer will return, but this time he won't be alone. Whoever sent him knows we're capable of resisting. They'll come back stronger, faster." Harris nodded, his brow furrowed. "I won't pretend we can handle that alone. We need a more significant response. I've already sent out a distress signal to the Federation, but we don't know when help will arrive." Adrian glanced over at the colony's tech team, which had been assessing the damage to their communication systems. "How long?" The lead technician, a woman named Lyra, hesitated before answering. "A few hours at best. We've patched the relay, but it's fragile. If they send another strike team, we could lose contact with the Federation before they can even respond." "Then we need to prepare now," Adrian said. "I'll coordinate with the ground forces to fortify the perimeter, and we'll need to track down the source of their communications. We can't let them get the jump on us again." As the room erupted into a flurry of activity, Adrian stepped outside. His mind raced. Soccer's appearance had been unexpected, but it wasn't the first time the colony had faced danger from outside forces. The Federation had always promised protection, but it had never been this far out on the fringe. The human race had always fought to survive, but in this case, survival was no longer enough. They needed to prove that they were a force to be reckoned with. Meanwhile, Soccer had reached the outskirts of the colony, his body battered but his resolve unbroken. The assassin moved like a shadow, his steps calculated, his mind already plotting his next move. The pain from his injuries was sharp, but it only made his rage burn brighter. Adrian Cole had proven to be a worthy adversary, but the human had underestimated the determination of the Nixidian people. Soccer's failure would not go unpunished. He would return to his superiors and report the human's strength and resourcefulness. But this time he would demand reinforcements. The Nixidian race was ancient, but they had learned long ago that power was not something to be given, it was something to be taken. And if humanity stood in their way, they would take it by force. Soccer's communicator crackled to life. The voice on the other end was cold and metallic, a sign of his superior's authority. "Report, Soccer." The assassin's mandibles clicked in frustration. The human is more than expected. He's resourceful and knows the terrain. But I have tracked him and I will return. Reinforcements are necessary. The voice on the communicator was silent for a moment before responding. This failure will be taken into account. You will return to the fleet for reassignment. But know this, Soccer. The next time you face this human, it will not be a simple hunt. We will test the limits of his kind and we will break them. Soccer's eyes gleamed with cold anticipation. I understand. I will not fail again. Back at the colony, Adrian and Colonel Harris surveyed the makeshift defenses they had hastily set up around the perimeter. Heavy barricades were erected around the key infrastructure, and armed patrols were on high alert. But even as Adrian inspected the fortifications, he couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. The air felt too still. He turned to Harris. We need more than just physical defenses. We need to disrupt their communications. We can't afford to be blindsided again. Harris nodded. I'm already working on it, but we need time. And we don't have much. Adrian surveyed the surrounding landscape. The colony was too exposed. Its location on the edge of known space made it a prime target for anyone seeking to test humanity's resolve. The Federation's response might be hours away, or it might be too late entirely. We need to go on the offensive, Adrian said, his mind already formulating a plan. I'll take a team into their communications center and disrupt their signal. If we cut them off from their backup forces, we'll have a fighting chance. Harris frowned. You're volunteering to go out there alone? I won't be alone, Adrian replied. I'll have my team. But we need to hit them hard and fast. The longer we wait, the more dangerous they'll become. As Adrian prepared to lead his team on their dangerous mission, he couldn't help but reflect on the battle with Soccer. He had expected a quick victory, but the Nixidian assassin had pushed him to his limits. Now, Adrian was driven by a single thought. He would never let humanity be prey again. They would hunt the hunters. The reckoning was about to begin. The team assembled in the dimly lit planning room beneath the colony's command center. Adrian stood at the front, a map of the surrounding terrain projected on the wall. His face was grim, but his eyes burned with determination. His team, 5 of the colony's best soldiers, stood ready, armed and prepared for the mission that would determine the colony's fate. We have one shot at this, Adrian said, his voice steady but tinged with urgency. We're going to hit their communications center and disable it. Without their ability to call for reinforcements, we'll have a chance to fight back. But we need to be fast. We don't know when Soccer and his people will regroup. The team nodded, each one understanding the weight of the task ahead. They were risking everything, venturing into the heart of enemy territory with no guarantee of success. But there was no other option. Adrian turned to one of his soldiers, a young woman named Jessica. Your team will be on point. Disable the security systems as we approach. We can't afford to be detected. Jessica, a sharp-eyed expert in electronics and sabotage, saluted. Understood, sir. We'll make sure they don't know we're coming until it's too late. Adrian then turned to the rest of the team. The rest of you will be with me, covering the perimeter and ensuring that nothing stands between us and our objective. We're in and out. No exceptions. With the plan set, the team geared up, checking their weapons and equipment one last time. Adrian slipped his rifle into place, feeling the weight of it against his back. The mission was dangerous, but it was the only chance they had. The journey to the Enis communications hub was treacherous. The colony's outskirts were no longer safe, and every shadow seemed to conceal another potential threat. The team moved quickly, staying close to the terrain and using the cover of abandoned buildings to avoid detection. The landscape had been ravaged by previous skirmishes, and every building they passed seemed to be a potential hiding place for enemy scouts. Adrian's senses were heightened, every crackling leaf or distant footstep sending his heart racing. The quiet was unnerving, as though the enemy was waiting, watching, preparing to spring a trap. But the team pressed on, their goal in sight, the communications facility at the far end of the colony. As they neared the building, Jessica and her team set to work, hacking into the security systems from a distance. Adrian stood watch, eyes scanning the surroundings for any sign of movement. The seconds felt like hours, the tension thick in the air. Almost there, Jessica muttered, her fingers flying across the small console in front of her. Just give me a few more seconds. The others were silent, knowing that any sound could alert the enemy. Adrian's pulse quickened as he thought of the danger they were in. If they were spotted now, it would be a massacre. Finally, Jessica's voice broke the silence. We're in. Security systems disabled. Adrian gave a nod of approval. Good. Move out. They stormed the communications hub, swift and silent. The building was dark, its lights flickering intermittently, casting long shadows on the walls. Inside, the air was thick with the hum of equipment, the glow of screens casting a cold, artificial light. Adrian's team spread out, covering each corner of the room. Jessica went to work immediately, slicing into the main terminal and preparing to take down the entire network. Adrian kept his weapon ready, every instinct screaming that the enemy wasn't far behind. As Jessica worked, Adrian's mind raced. They had to hurry. Every second spent here increased the risk of being discovered. Then, without warning, the ground beneath them trembled. The walls shook with a force that sent dust falling from the ceiling. "We've got company," one of the soldiers shouted. Adrian's heart sank. They were too late. Saga had returned, and this time he wasn't alone. Outside, Saga stood with his reinforcements, 5 more Nixidian soldiers, their bodies armored and their weapons glowing with deadly energy. Saga's mandibles twitched with rage. This time he would not let the humans escape. "They are inside," one of the Nixidian soldiers reported, his voice cold. "We can take them before they finish their work." Saga nodded, his gaze fixed on the building. "No. We wait. The human will come to us. He always does." Back inside the communications hub, Adrian's team was under siege. The tremor had only been the beginning. Moments after the building shook, a series of high-powered energy blasts rained down from above, smashing into the walls and sending debris flying. "We've got to move," Adrian shouted. "Jessica, finish what you're doing and get to the exit. We need to fall back now." But Jessica's eyes were locked on the terminal. "I'm almost there, just a little more time." Adrian gritted his teeth. He knew the risk, but he couldn't afford to waste any more time. "No. We're not staying here to die. We leave now." Just as Adrian moved toward Jessica to pull her away, a shadow loomed in the doorway. Saga. The assassin's yellow eyes glowed in the dark, his clawed hands reaching for his plasma spear. Behind him, the Nixidian reinforcements fanned out, weapons raised. The time for subtlety was over. Adrian's team fell into formation, weapons aimed at the door. He could feel the weight of the situation. This was the moment they would either win or lose. "We can't fight them all, Adrian," Jessica said, her voice strained. "We need to go. Now." Adrian's gaze never left Saga. "No one's leaving until this is over." Saga stepped forward, his voice cold and mocking. "You should have run when you had the chance, human. Now you will die here." Adrian smiled, a grim determination setting in. "Maybe. But we're not done yet." The standoff was electric, the air thick with tension as both sides prepared for the inevitable clash. The atmosphere inside the communications hub had shifted from tense silence to an electric hum of impending violence. The deadly standoff stretched between two worlds, human ingenuity and Nixidian ruthlessness, neither side willing to back down. Adrian's team stood poised, weapons at the ready, their eyes locked on Saga and his reinforcements. The weight of their situation pressed on them all, but Adrian could see the fire in their eyes. They had come too far to surrender now. Saga's voice was low, laced with contempt. "You fought well, human. But you should have known your limits. No one defies the Nixidians and survives." Adrian's finger rested on the trigger, but he didn't fire. Not yet. He was waiting for the right moment, the one chance to tip the scales. The team had been trained for situations like this. Nothing was left to chance. Saga's eyes narrowed. "I will kill every last one of you, but you will remember the name of Saga, the assassin who was sent to destroy you." Adrian exhaled sharply, his voice cutting through the tension. "And you will remember the name of Adrian Cole, the human who sent you back to your masters in pieces?" At that moment, the door behind Saga slammed open, and the remaining members of Adrian's team poured into the room, taking strategic positions. They had known that the moment of reckoning had arrived and were prepared to make their stand. "Focus on the terminal," Adrian barked to Jessica. "Don't stop until it's down. We'll keep them off you." The team's sharpshooters took position behind cover, their rifles aimed at the Nixidian soldiers. They had no illusions about the danger they faced, but the stakes were high, too high to let fear dictate their actions. Saga roared in fury. "No more running. This ends now." The Nixidian soldiers surged forward, their weapons flashing with deadly energy as they charged. Adrian's team responded immediately. The room erupted into chaos, flashes of plasma fire lighting the walls, deafening cracks of gunshots echoing through the space. Adrian sprinted to the front, engaging with one of the Nixidian soldiers in hand-to-hand combat. The alien was faster and stronger than any human, but Adrian had been trained for this. His strikes were precise, focused, his body moving in sync with his enemy's attacks. With a well-placed kick, he sent the Nixidian reeling back, then followed through with a punch that knocked the soldier off balance. His rifle wasn't far away, and in a split second he had it in his hands. A quick shot to the chest took down the first soldier. But there were more, and Soccer was still standing at the center of it all, the imposing figure of an apex predator. Jessica's voice crackled through the comms. "The terminal is almost there. I'm disabling their backup systems. We just need a few more seconds." Adrian's mind raced. They couldn't hold off for much longer. The pressure was building, and with each passing moment the Nixidians were pushing harder. But they had come this far, and Adrian wasn't about to let their efforts go to waste. Soccer, seeing the humans' defiance, lunged forward, his claws slashing through the air with deadly precision. Adrian narrowly dodged the strike, the razor-sharp claws grazing his side, drawing a line of blood. He winced but didn't falter. "You should have run, human," Soccer hissed. "Now you die." But Adrian's eyes were cold, unyielding. "No. You're the one who's going to die." With one swift motion, Adrian spun around, bringing his rifle up and unloading a burst of plasma fire directly at Soccer's chest. The assassin staggered back, surprised by the force of the shot. His armor absorbed some of the impact, but the force was enough to knock him off balance. Before Soccer could recover, Adrian moved in close, his body instinctively taking advantage of the opening. He shoved the barrel of his rifle into the assassin's face. "This ends now." Soccer's mandibles clicked in frustration, but he struggled to push Adrian away. The Nixidian's strength was formidable, but Adrian was fueled by something Soccer didn't understand, the raw tenacity of a human who wouldn't give up. And then there was the sound of the terminal's final shutdown. "System disabled," Jessica shouted, her voice tinged with triumph. "We've cut them off." The room fell into a brief but powerful silence. For a moment, Soccer just stood there, his yellow eyes burning with fury. But the realization was setting in. He had failed. The humans had won. Adrian, breathing heavily but resolute, kept his rifle trained on Soccer. "Your people won't come. Not this time." Soccer's shoulders slumped, and for the first time, Adrian saw the flicker of something like defeat in the assassin's eyes. "You humans," Soccer spat, his voice filled with disdain. "You're nothing more than a nuisance. But mark my words, you'll never stop us." Adrian took a step forward, his expression hard. "Maybe not. But this fight? It's ours." Before Soccer could retort, Adrian pulled the trigger. A final, devastating shot struck the assassin in the head, the force of it sending the Nixidian crashing to the floor lifeless. The remaining Nixidian soldiers hesitated, their resolve shaken. One by one Adrian's team picked them off, each shot more deliberate than the last. The aliens were strong, but they had no strategy left. They were being systematically dismantled. As the last of the Nixidians fell, Adrian surveyed the battlefield. His team was battered but standing, their breaths heavy, their weapons still in hand. The cost had been high, but they had succeeded. They had held the line. "We did it," Jessica said, a faint smile breaking through the exhaustion. Adrian nodded, though the weight of the victory was heavy on him. For now. He turned toward the door, his mind already focused on what was to come. Soccer's words still echoed in his mind. They had won this battle, but the war was far from over. The Nixidians would return, but humanity would be ready. Adrian had seen the strength of his people, had seen it in the eyes of every soldier, every colonist. In the days following the battle, the colony worked tirelessly to rebuild. The walls were scarred, the infrastructure damaged, but humanity's resolve had only grown stronger. The victory over Soccer and his Nixidian forces was a symbol of what they could achieve when they fought together. Adrian stood at the edge of the colony, staring out into the horizon, the ruins of the battlefield in the distance. The sun was just beginning to rise, casting a golden light over the wreckage. Despite their triumph, Adrian couldn't shake the feeling that it was only the beginning. The Nixidians, though defeated for now, would return. Their failure was not something they would forget easily. But that wasn't what worried Adrian. What worried him was that this victory had been hard-won, and they would not always be so lucky. The Federation's promised reinforcements hadn't arrived in time. The reality was clear. Humanity could no longer rely on others for their survival. "We need to prepare for the next attack," Adrian said, his voice low as Jessica approached from behind. She had been working with the engineers to reinforce the colony's defenses. "We've got the perimeter sealed and the communication systems are back online," Jessica replied. "But you're right. This won't be the last time they come for us." Adrian nodded. We can't afford to wait. The Nixidians were testing us. They're learning. We need to start pushing back to make sure they understand that we're not just some colony on the edge of space. We're a force to be reckoned with. Jessica's eyes met his. You're talking about striking back. Taking the fight to them? I am, Adrian said. We have the knowledge. We have the resources. We can't wait for the Federation to act. If we don't take the initiative, we'll always be a target. Jessica hesitated, then spoke, her tone serious. It's risky. But I see where you're going. We need to show them that we're not just survivors, we're warriors. A few days later, Adrian called together a council of leaders from the colony. The room was crowded with military officers, engineers, and strategists. The mood was one of cautious optimism. The people of the colony had fought hard and won, but there was a lingering question on everyone's mind. What now? Adrian stood before them, his presence commanding attention. We've faced our first real test. We've seen what they're capable of. But we also know that we can hold our ground. The Nixidians won't stop. And the Federation. He trailed off, knowing that the Federation had failed to provide the aid they had promised. They had sent the distress signals and yet nothing had come. They were on their own. But we're not alone, Adrian continued. We have each other. And we have the strength of humanity. It's time we stop being prey and start becoming the hunters. We're going to take the fight to the Nixidians. It's time to show them that the human race will not be wiped out. There was a murmur in the room, a mix of disbelief and awe. But as Adrian's words sank in, the room grew quieter. They could see the truth in his eyes. They had the knowledge, the drive, and the will to make it happen. What do you propose? Colonel Harris asked, his voice steady but filled with a hint of concern. We don't just wait for the next attack. We hit them where it hurts, at their bases. We'll strike their supply lines, disrupt their communications, hit their research outposts. We'll make it clear that they can't just come here and expect an easy victory. We'll show them that we're willing to fight, and we'll show the rest of the galaxy what humanity is capable of. There was a pause as the council members exchanged looks. Then one by one they began to nod, a sense of purpose settling over them. The human race had survived so much. They had made it through wars, through oppression, through fear. They had faced adversity and conquered it. Now they would face their greatest challenge yet, and they would not falter. Then let's do it, Colonel Harris said, his voice resolute. As preparations for the counteroffensive began, Adrian found himself once again walking the streets of the colony, his mind on the future. The world had changed in the past few days. What had once been a peaceful settlement on the edge of space was now a target, a place where humanity had drawn a line in the sand. But as he walked, he noticed something that gave him hope. The people were no longer fearful. They were focused. There was a quiet strength in the way they worked, in the way they spoke, in the way they moved. They had faced the darkness and emerged stronger for it. In the face of the unknown, humanity had proven that it would not go quietly. They would fight, adapt, and overcome. The Nixidians had underestimated them, and now they would see the full force of what humanity could do when pushed to the brink. Adrian's comm beeped, and he answered it, hearing Jessica's voice on the other end. We're ready, Adrian. The first wave of ships is prepped. We've got the tech and the weapons. We're going to hit them where it counts. Adrian smiled grimly. Good. Let's make sure they know exactly what it means to challenge humanity. The shipyards were bustling as humanity's fleet of ships, hastily repaired and reinforced, prepared to leave the planet. Ship was a symbol of humanity's defiance, a declaration that they would no longer be hunted, no longer be at the mercy of alien forces. As the ships lifted off from the surface of the planet, Adrian watched from the command center. The horizon was painted in fire, the reflection of the ship's engines igniting the sky as they ascended. It was a new beginning. This was no longer just a colony on the edge of space. It was a symbol. It was a message to the galaxy. Humanity would not be conquered. The end. Thanks for watching, everyone. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more exciting HFY stories. Your support means the world to us. And make sure to tap the bell icon so you never miss an update. Stay tuned for our next adventure, and until then, keep exploring the stars. See you in the next video.